If you've been under the impression that patriotism is dead among Britain's younger generation, think again. The narrative that Gen Z is politically apathetic, left-wing by default, and blindly loyal to progressive orthodoxy just took a thunderous blow, in a nightclub no less. In a scene that would make any 10-spin doctor break into a cold sweat, thousands of young Britons, many barely old enough to remember the coalition years, erupted into a full-throated chant aimed squarely at the Labour leader. Keir Starmer is a bad guy, not just a few rebels with glow sticks. This was a unified, passionate repudiation of a man who, less than a decade ago, was seen as Labour's serious suit, wearing saviour after the Corbyn years. It wasn't a Tory rally. It wasn't a Tory rally. It wasn't a reform town hall. It wasn't even a student protest. It was a club. A pulsating, neon-lit haven of the very demographic that's supposed to be Labour's backbone. And they were not chanting about climate justice, Palestine, or tuition fees. They were making a populist statement against the man who hopes to become Prime Minister. Labour under Keir Starmer has done little to inspire them. Starmer's technocratic brand of opposition politics, cautious, calculated, and catastrophically charisma-free, has left a vacuum where leadership should be. He's not hated because he's radical. He's hated because he's forgettable. In an age of TikTok populism and viral authenticity, he's what happens when the algorithm skips you entirely. The result: a surge in enthusiasm for populist alternatives, most notably Nigel Farage's reform. Yes, that Nigel. Whoa! The man who has become, improbably, the closest thing to a political rock star for a new generation of Brits who feel abandoned by both Labour and the Conservatives. These kids aren't brainwashed by the right. They're furious at a broken system and willing to back whoever swings hardest at the status quo. There was a time when chants like "We want our country back" were dismissed as the cries of pint-swigging pensioners in Wetherspoons. But something has changed. The sentiment, if not the slogan, is now being echoed in vape-hazed nightclubs and on politically charged Discord servers. It's less about nationalism and more about reclaiming a sense of control over housing, over speech, over identity, over truth. The young people booing Keir Starmer aren't just fed up with Labour's policies. They're disillusioned with Labour's soul. For them, Starmer's Labour represents middle-class managerialism, social media, approved morality plays, and a tepid embrace of the very institutions they believe have failed them. It's no longer edgy to rage against the Tories. It's expected. But booing Labour? That's the new rebellion. This viral nightclub moment is more than a flash of political theatre. It's a warning. If Labour continues to coast on the assumption that the youth vote is in the bag because of Tory fatigue, because of Brexit, because of climate anxiety, it risks a rude awakening at the polls. Reform UK is no longer a fringe protest vote. It's becoming a lightning rod for cross-generational discontent, especially among the very voters Labour once considered their future. As the next general election looms, the Labour machine would do well to pay attention. Not to the pundits, but to the playlist. When a crowd of 20-somethings with no party loyalty chant in unison that the leader of the opposition is a bad guy, that's not apathy. That's a movement waiting for someone to speak their language.
What about tents versus hotels? Andrea Jenkins, your now colleague in Greater Lincolnshire.
Well, thank heavens we're asking the question, because actually, if smart, organised tents are suitable for British Army in places like Afghanistan, why aren't they good enough for people who've come here illegally? We should have that debate and that discussion. But Camilla, the smart thing to do...
Smart and civilised tents for refugees. It doesn't quite work, does it? I mean, the reason why tents are smart and civilised when the army is in them is because these are people
because the army are structured and disciplined.
With hospital corners,
well,
right?
Maybe actually...
What
maybe we should have
camp made of tents has ever looked smart and civilised in your experience?
Well, maybe a bit of discipline and a bit of structure and a bit of fitness, it's good for all of us. So
what are you saying? You're going to put asylum seekers through some kind of military camp?
My real point is that we've got to process people quickly and remove them. If they've come here illegally, they should all be removed. And the other thing, of course, we've got to do is stop them crossing the channel. This year, I suspect we're going to be 45 to 50,000 people.
Yeah.
By the time of the next election, we could be looking at 150,000. And the British people are raging furious about this.
So your offshore processing is going to be your deterrent?
If you leave the ECHR...
You're reinvigorating Rwanda.
Well, you leave the ECHR and you pick up and take back, which France is legally obliged to stop them leaving their shores, and they're in breach of their international duties.
Are you happy with the...
It was a moment Taylor made for viral television. You're going to put asylum seekers through some kind of military camp. Camilla Tominey didn't mince her words. Facing off with Reform UK's Richard Tice on live TV, the exchange cut straight through the political gloss and landed squarely on a question that's increasingly dividing Britain: how to handle the spiraling asylum crisis. At the heart of the storm is Tice's proposal: ditch the hotels, cancel the barges, and house incoming asylum seekers in what he describes as smart and civilized tents. His justification: cost, efficiency, and above all, deterrent. But to many, including Tominey, the optics and ethics of the plan bear more than a passing resemblance to military encampments or offshore holding. The idea is not entirely new. Similar proposals have surfaced before, often championed by right-wing populist parties in Europe and Australia. But Tice, the brash Reform UK chairman and architect of a post-Farage nationalist revival, isn't shy about owning it. Why are we spending millions putting people in 4-star hotels when we could provide orderly, temporary accommodation, quickly, safely, and cheaply? He asked. But the language of orderly and civilized is doing heavy lifting. Critics say this is nothing more than rebranded internment, a visual reminder that the UK is done rolling out the red carpet. And while Tice insists the tents would be clean, secure, and humane, the very imagery, migrants in compounds, is politically explosive. Tominey's sharp questioning reflected the unease many feel. What kind of message does this send to the world about how Britain treats the vulnerable? She pressed. For Tice, the answer was simple. The UK needs to send exactly that message. In that context, tents are not just a policy. They're a signal. They declare loudly that the UK is closing the door to economic migrants masquerading as asylum seekers. That message, regardless of whether it's fair or lawful, resonates with a public tired of perceived system abuse and growing taxpayer bills. And that's the calculation Tice is making. Reform UK isn't trying to win over centrists. It's gunning for the millions of voters who feel politically homeless, who think the Rwanda plan doesn't go far enough, and who view international law not as a safeguard, but as an obstacle. This isn't just Reform UK saber rattling for attention. It's setting the agenda, as the Conservatives scramble to fend off a reform surge on the right and Labour attempts to avoid alienating its fragile electoral coalition. Tice's proposals are forcing uncomfortable conversations into the mainstream. Tominey's challenge, sharp, incredulous, and reflective of many in the public, may have put Tice on the defensive momentarily. But in an age where political clout is measured in controversy, he likely considers the exchange a win. Whether Britain adopts tents or not, one thing is clear. The polite managed debate over immigration is over. In its place is a battleground of stark imagery, political brinkmanship, and a country divided between its humanitarian conscience and its populist instincts.